Hello, welcome back to Project Prelim 2024. Today, let's check the previous questions from Geography. As you know, Geography is a core subject and there are 8 questions in the mains GS paper 1. So, for prelims also, you have something like 15 to 20 questions every year. So, Geography, it will be difficult to skip some portion because if you check the previous questions, there have been questions from almost all the parts in the syllabus. So, it's important that you get your basics right from the NCERT books, and of course you can add it up with some other sources as well. And let's see the actual questions now, and we could see that how much weightage has been given to each areas. So, let's go. So, as I said, the Indian and world geography are important here. From India, every aspect of the geography, and from world geography, it's particularly the location as well as the resources. So, this applies to both the prelims and main. So, when you study, make sure that you understand every concept correct, so that in mains as well, you should be able to write about them, and in prelims, you should be able to make the right choices. The very basic ideas from geography can be a question. So, the dynamic changes in Earth and the very basic elements which contribute to that, the gravitational force, plate movements, electromagnetic radiation, this kind of basics can often be the question. So, this basic understanding of concept is important for your prelims. Again, another question on Earth's magnetic field. A simple one here. Then this is about the earthquakes, the seismograph which measure the earthquake, the P waves and S waves. So this is again a fundamental thing, and this actually comes from your disaster management thing, which is a major component in your GS mains as well. So this question was about that. Then again from the basics, the longest day of northern hemisphere. So, which among the following have contributed to the evolution of human beings? So, there are some choices. The glacial cycles, continental drift are some of the choices which are correct here. Then the range of temperature is another important question. So, the interior of the continent is high as compared to the coastal areas. So, that is the answer here. So, that range of temperature is, you could see that this same concept has been repeated in certain other questions. Again, the temperature contrast between continents and oceans, a very similar kind of a question from another year. The specific heat of water is more than that of land surface. That is another important point you need to take from that. Then about the clouds, you have a question here. The clouds reflect the solar radiation and cool the surface of Earth. High thin clouds trap infrared radiation. So this is again a very important aspect. Then about monsoon, there is a question, what is the most important character of monsoon? Then the monsoons from south to north, it actually decreases, and from east to west also it decreases. So that means the desert corner, because it is in the northwest part of India, that receives the least amount of rainfall. So you could easily make out that connection. Then about westerlies, there was a question, and if you look at the diagram, you will be able to clearly memorize. Geography, the diagrams and maps are very important, so make sure that while you read either from the textbook or from the online resources, this pictures has to be there in your mind, and you have to keep looking at them. You could even take a printout and paste it in your room, so that you keep looking at them and you will be able to memorize the facts. Then another question on western disturbances here. Then about the jet streams and cyclones. These are very important things because Nowadays we are undergoing a lot of climate change. So these things keep coming in the news. So geography, there is this connection. So whatever things coming in the news, you have to go back and understand the basics behind that. Then what are the things which affect ocean currents? Again, something from the basics of geography. Then again, the sea surface temperature. There is a question you could see here. Then equatorial countercurrent and the the eastward flow, why is it? Then about El Nino and La Nina. So every year that is a expected area, because these two are very important in determining the climate. Then Indian Ocean dipole, that's again is very much in the news, so you should have a clear understanding about that. Another one from the similar area, ocean mean temperature. So this is again very important, so make a note of that. Like it's how it is being measured, and how it is being used to assess whether the amount of rainfall in monsoon will be less or more. So this year also there has been predictions based on this. About pole star, what is it? There was a question. Then the sun does not set below the horizon at the Arctic Circle. So the longest day, you already seen there was a question like that. Then India's cultural contact with the Southeast Asia and the maritime relations along with that. Then about the area where you get the maximum number of fishes. Then the tropical zone and the temperate zone, what are the difference between these two? Then about navigation and the Isthmus of Kra, and a new canal across that will shorten the distance. So about that, because this question I remember was that was a news at that time, so that's why they particularly asked about this one. Then about ocean tides, again something from the very basics of geography. About the fresh water in the world, the glaciers, ice caps, and a lot of fresh water are there in the clouds as well. So this kind of questions from the basics, a little bit of thought from your side is needed for this. Then something again from water, the World Water Development Report. So this kind of reports are important in all your areas, be it development or economics or anything. So this is from the World Water Development Report. A question on Himalayas about its characteristics, basic characteristics. Another question from Siachen Glacier about its location. Then the Nanda Devi peak, where do you find it? So this kind of location based question regarding the peaks and the corresponding mountains or the areas can be a potential question. Then similarly about these three, what are they? So they are saline lakes. So like the mountains and peaks, the water bodies, the lakes, rivers, etc. are also very important in the exam point of view. Similarly, you see this lakes or water bodies and the corresponding states here. So especially the wetlands are very important. So the Ramsar sites in India, you should make a note about their location and their names. Similarly, the lakes and rivers, there was a question. Then two rivers which rise from Eastern Ghat, there was a question. Then Satluj and Indus here. So this is the easy one, as you see. Then about Brahmaputra, Irrawaddy and Mekong. there was this particular question about their course. Then about 2 tributaries of Brahmaputra, there was a question. Then Lohit and Subhasiri are rivers of Arunachal Pradesh. So about the major rivers and their tributaries and their general course, you should have a fair amount of idea. Then again Narmada Valley and the Narmada River and the Rift Valley through which it follows, there was a question. Then Godavari's tributaries, there was a question. Then Narmada Tapti linking, that was from the current affairs that year. Then river Rangit, which is a tributary of Teesta. Again about canyon, Gandikota Canyon, which was created by the Pennar River. So similarly, an inland shipping port from Rajasthan, which was in the news, was also a question in 1 year. And there were questions on port from last year about different ports and their importance. Then dams and reservoirs. Similarly, the dams are again, as you know, are very important for India. So dams and reservoirs, there was a question. Then about another question on water reservoirs. Which among the following, what are the reservoirs? Or you just get the names and you need to identify what are they. So such kind of questions are expected. Then the rivers and the corresponding seas also. So where exactly they join. So that was a question from the world geography. Then about a particular lake which turned into a desert, there was a question from Africa. Then about the Barren Island volcano of India. Then about coral reefs and their importance. Then sand mining and riverbeds, how it affects. Then about the climate, from the equatorial climate, what are the characteristics. So climatology, the last 5 years actually there was no big questions from the climate area, but you can't just leave it all together. So have a fair idea about not only about the Indian monsoons and things like that, but generally about the world climate. Among the, after reading the description, you have to identify the type of terrain. So the answer here is the steppe, the grasslands. And about the tropical savanna, the African, grasslands. Then there was a question on tropical rainforest and the soil. Then there was a question again about the grasslands. Then African and Eurasian desert, there was a question. There was a question on the desert plants and their characteristics. So after this basic area, let's move on to something like agriculture, which is actually a very, very important area for your geography. So you could see that a lot of questions has been asked from agriculture, which includes the type of agriculture, the type of crops, etc. So let's see what are the questions. There was a question on mixed farming. There was a question on the, this agricultural soils release nitrogen and, ammonia and nitrogen compounds. So how all these things release certain things like, nitrogen and ammonia into the atmosphere. There was a question. Then there was a question on micro irrigation, another question on drip irrigation, a question on, how irrigation over a period of time contribute to the, soils. Then there was a question on, the carbon sequestration and what are the practices which help in that. Then there was a question on the zero tillage. Some type of agriculture promote that, and what are the effects of zero tillage? That was a question. Then again another question on carbon capture and sequestration. Then there was a question on the nitrogen fixing plants, some of the examples. Then the release of phosphorus to atmosphere, what are the major causes? There was a question. Then there was a question on the permaculture farming. A question on contour bunting, which is a very basic thing. There was a question on biochar, how it can be used as a part of the growing medium in vertical farming, etc. So there was a question on the eco-friendly practices in agriculture. Then there is this concept of fertigation. Then there was this question on the vegetable oil imports. Then there was a question on kharif crops in India, which among the following can be called as kharif crops. So you should have a clear idea about the three cropping seasons of India, the kharif, the rabi and the zaid in between. Then minimum support price was a question. Then again there was a question on kharif crops and the area which has been cultivated under that. Then black gram can be cultivated as both a kharif and rabi crop. Then again about crops, cowpea, green gram and PGNP, there was a question. There was a question on sesame, groundnut and pearl millet, which are actually rain-fed crops. So there was a question on cotton. There was a question on paddy and jute from the Gangetic plain. Another question on rice. So you should have a fair idea about the major crops in India and their area and the nature of cultivation in general. Then there was a question on sugarcane initiative supporting. Another question on sugarcane cultivation here. One more question you could see, sugarcane is among the crops given, sugarcane is supposed to be more water efficient than the rest of them. And another question on the sugarcane price. Then there was a question on the agricultural marketing, which is very important, which could be asked in your mains economics part as well. Then the byproducts of sugarcane production. Then there was a question on palm oil. There was a question on biopesticides. A question on the thing called sea buckthorn from Ladakh. A question on maize, what are the uses? A question on neem oil. Another question on neem oil. Then a question on cluster bean based on the current news. Another question on this plant called Himalayan nettle. Then the process of biomass gasification, there was a question. Then a question on biofuels, again, what are the major raw materials which can be used to produce the biofuels. Then there is a question on the quality of seeds. There was questions on genetically modified crops, a question on Briti brinjal here. Another question on genetically engineered plant and its usages. Then Bolgard 1 and Bolgard 2 technologies are mentioned in the context of developing genetically modified crop plants again. So the genetically modified crops are very important. You should have a fair idea about the laws regarding that in India as well. Another question there about the GM mustard. Then discovery of a new species of banana, which was in news. Then about the millet promotion. You often hear about that in different formats. So there was a question. Then we are going to something basic like laterite soil and what are the crops. So different types of soils and the different types of crops, have a fair idea. Then black cotton soil and about their character. Then use of nitrogen fertilizer and what can be its side effects. A question on deforestation and tropical climate which cause the soil erosion. Then integrated watershed development, that's a very important component. So this is about the system of rice intensification and some characters associated with that. Then there is this concept of seed village. A question on globally important agricultural heritage system. The Kuttanadu from Kerala is also added in this list. Then another question from agriculture, climate smart village. Then what are the things which can help in the water conservation in agriculture? Some of the practices you could see here. Then soil health card, that's again from the field of agriculture. Then National Agricultural Market Scheme, that's also very important. Then the Ministry of Commerce and they actually supervise the National Program for Organic Production and the related related information regarding the organic production. Then there is this thing called conservation agriculture. Then India is the largest exporter of rice. Then a question on the agricultural pesticides. About two products, moringa and tamarind. Then two trees which are actually deciduous trees. So you should have different, when you study different types of forest, you should have idea about different types of trees as well. Then there was a question on different types of mushrooms. Then a comparison between the agricultural land in India and China. So you could see that a lot of questions from agriculture, every aspect of it. Now let's move on to the resources. So there was this question on the sixth mass extinction, which could be a reason for man's overusage of resources. So that's from a general perspective. There was a question on the coral reefs in India. There was a question on another question from the coral reef and how we can use it to restore the damaged coral reef. Then there was a question on the coal bed methane. There was a question on Indian coal and its components, which was a tough question. It was asked some 10 years before, I believe. Then another reason for India to import coal. Then the coal-based thermal power plants in India and some of their characteristics were asked. Then there was a question on Indian steel and how they need to import coking coal. Then there was a question on the coal mines. So coal is a very important thing for India. We still use it in a lot of thermal power plants and other things. There was a question on thorium. There was a question on monazite, which is of course a rare earth mineral, and the monazite actually contained thorium. So there was some other information on that in this question. Then there was another question on uranium. So again, nuclear energy is very important for India, so you should understand all these things. Then there was a question on these two, ilmenite and rutile, which are the rich sources of titanium. Then there was a question on the cobalt, and the Republic of Congo is the major producer of that. Then there was a question on this thing called Siliminate. Then a question on the companies, the mini Ratna companies. We have mini Ratnas as well as Navaratnas. Then there was a question on the rare earth metals and their usage. There was a question on the natural gas and mica and the places which is famous for that. So you should know about the major minerals in India and their area where they are majorly found. Then there was a question on ammonia and sulfur. There was a question on the textile clusters of India, some of the examples. There were questions on the GI products, some of them. This particularly about textiles again. There was another question on the GI products, some of the two famous things, Banarasi brocade and the Tirupati laddu. Then there was investment and manufacturing zone, there was a question about that. Then there was a question on the district mineral foundation. So about solar power there was a question. Another question on solar power about the silicon chips and things associated with that. Then there was this question on the solar power airport of India, that is the Cochin International Airport. Then there was a solar park in the world from Rajasthan. A floating solar park from Thoothukudi, that was also a question. So solar power is viewed as the a future for India, and of course you could expect a lot of questions. Most of them are current. Then let's see some questions on tribes here. There was a question on this came in between. This is about Switzerland being the gold exporter. So let's go back to the other areas, that is tribes. So the Scheduled Tribes Forest Act and the role of Gram Sabhas in that. Then tribes and states, there was a question. There was a question on the Korku tribes of Gond and Korku tribes and their tree-planting festival. These things usually comes in the newspaper and you could make a note of that if anything peculiar like this happens. Then there was a question on the Changpa community and the Pashmina shawls they produced. Then particularly vulnerable tribal groups, there was a question. There was another question from the Scheduled Tribes and Traditional Forest Dwellers Act. Yeah. Then there were questions based on specific states in India. There was this question on which among the following are the tea producing states. There was a question, they gave you some information and want you to identify the state, and here the answer was Gujarat. So you should have a fair idea about the topography and the the crops and other kind of things of each state of India. Then about Arunachal Pradesh and Rajasthan lying in the same latitude, even though the topography is otherwise extremely different. Another question on Arunachal Pradesh based on the horticulture there. Then Gujarat being the westernmost state and Arunachal Pradesh being the easternmost state. So as I told you, you should have a fair idea about the maps of India. Then Kodaikanal, which has an artificial lake, there was a question. The living root bridge of Meghalaya was a question. Then there is location based questions. Here, as I told you, the map, your familiarity with the map matters a lot. So, location, Sri Shailam is in Nallamalai Hills. Then there was this Amarkandak question on Amarkandak region. Then this BR Hills and Sheshachalam Hills. So, their location was the question. Then, the towns and rivers, there were questions. There were similarly questions on the peaks and the states. There were questions on the areas within the places, the particular place like Shirdi, and it is in the region of Vidarbha. Similarly, a place and the larger region was the question here. Then there was the question on the glaciers and rivers. Then 10-degree channel between Andaman and Nicobar, there was a question. A question on the NH6, which connects actually Mumbai to Kolkata. There was a question on the east-west corridor and where it connects. So you should have an idea about this kind of new connectivity projects of India. Then a Pulicat Lake, which actually is situated in 2 states. Then from Kohima to Kottayam, how many states you will be crossing? That was a question. So Kottayam is in Kerala and Kohima is in Nagaland, and you have to count it. So such kind of questions are possible in the future as well. Then which among the following cities, this was the exact question actually, which is closest to that, on a longitudinal, if you draw a line, which of them is closest to that of Delhi. So that's Bangalore, and Delhi actually lies in the same line, you could see from the map here. So this was of course a very difficult question. There was a question on this Chandipur in Odisha. There was a question on the Ran of Kutch and its characters. There was a question on Atlas Mountain in Morocco. A question on Cameroon, which among the following country is part of the Congo Basin, and the answer was Cameroon there. There was a question of arranging the cities from south to north. Again, I think it was very difficult because all these states, countries are very close. You could see that they are actually situated very close to each other. So arranging those cities, those countries from south to north could have been a very difficult thing to do. Then Great Nicobar is nearer to Sumatra than Sri Lanka, Java and Borneo. Again, a tough question. Then Golan Heights from Middle East, just to identify the location. Then location of Turkey between Mediterranean and Black Sea, that was a question asked in 1 year. Then the sea and the nearby countries, there was questions. Then Mediterranean Sea and the countries which share coastline with that. It's actually a very big list, so you should have a fair idea about it. You may not be able to remember all of them. Then, the Ukraine and its neighbors, there was a question. Because of the Ukraine-Russia war recently, this question asked a couple of years ago, I believe. Then Chechnya, part of Russian Federation, easy one. Then again, Aral Sea, which has shrunk immensely because of the human activities, that was also a question. So, I would say that geography, the questions can be from moderate to tough. Very easy questions are actually rare. But if you have covered your basics properly, and if you keep checking the maps and the current news, you will be able to do a good deal of it. Almost 75% of the questions you will be able to solve. And as geography is a major subject, don't skip any particular part. Make sure that you revise properly and you keep check the past question papers. So this question papers which you have seen are from the 2011 to 2023. So keep checking them and go back to your textbooks and read them once more. Thank you for watching.